Right. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday, April 15th, 2024 Active Transportation Committee meeting. Firstly, we acknowledge with respect that we're meeting on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, and we're honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Swepsum nations. I'll call this meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Looking for approval of the agenda from somebody. Thank you, Stefan. Anyone opposed to the agenda? Thank you. That's unanimous. We have minutes to adopt. Yes, we do, from February 20th, 2024. If I can have a mover, please. Thank you, David. No seconder required. Anyone opposed? Thank you so much. That's unanimous. And public participation. Would any member of the public like to come forward and say anything at all? Mr. Parkinson? No. All right. Thank you so much. And no one online. New business. I'd like to welcome Tyler Pettipies, Capital Projects Lead. And this is all about intersections. Is that right? Come on. Just hit your mic there, Tyler, for us.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. If you don't recognize me with the new still Tyler, Capital Projects Lead of our engineering department here at the city. And through the chair, I'm here tonight to present the active transportation treatments at intersections. So just to refresh, on our last meeting together, we discussed the buffered protected bike lane program. And it was at this meeting where there was a general discussion about active transportation initiatives and their treatments at intersections. And from this, the recommendation was made to council that staff return to the Active Transportation Committee with a prioritized project list of intersection improvements for cycling and pedestrian movements. We're working on this, and in the interim, we'd like to take the opportunity to discuss different types of treatments, as well as the projects that we're building this year as part of our active transportation sidewalk and bike lane program. And just to provide an update on this, tender for these projects closed last Tuesday. We had 6 bidders for the projects, which is quite a lot for what we're seeing typically for tenders. And we'll be going on April 22nd to award these jobs. And depending if we don't hit any speed bumps, we should be actually starting these projects next month. So quite excited about that. And of course, please feel free to ask any questions throughout. Okay, so just to refresh on what we went over in the last meeting and what staff heard at this meeting. We've discussed the prioritization of active transportation treatments at intersections and the desire to review intersection design and explore different treatment options at intersections. What this means is reviewing how pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles move through intersections to promote the use of active transportation, which means ensuring the integration of intersections with our active transportation infrastructure. So these are the general guidelines for active transportation and for projects. Taking a step back, we have our OCP. Sorry, the OCP isn't a step back. Taking a step back and what guides our decision making for infrastructure. So we have our OCP, which provides the community's input on the objectives and direction for the city. We have our TMP and ATMP, which outlines the transportation network and design of the road network down to the facility types based on volumes, speed, and road classification. And we have the BC Active Transportation Design Guide. So this is where you're going to find the majority of the guidance on our active transportation infrastructure, facility types, and as you can see, it came out in 2019. Going down to the engineering standards, so we have our Transportation Association Canada geometric design guides for Canadian roads, and our pedestrian and crossing control guides. And these, of course, provide the engineering requirements based on speed, volumes, and other design criteria. And of course, not to mention the other technical documents, things like NACTO design guidelines, and other briefs and case studies. Actually, I'll move on to the next slide here. Okay, so moving on to the active transportation treatments. So here you can see the general sort of change in active transportation treatments. So starting off with the first one there, you see the crosswalk with twin parallel line markings. This is sort of the first level of upgrades that you see at an uncontrolled crossing. Twin parallel lines provide that space for pedestrians to cross the road, provide the delineation for pedestrians to cross. And moving up, you'll see in areas where you might have higher pedestrian volumes, or of course, school zones or playground zones, things like zebra lines with advanced yield to pedestrian markings. And then we get further into the higher level of active transportation treatments at intersections, such as continuous concrete sidewalks and further continuous bike lanes. So as you can see, an increase of active transportation infrastructure, of course, comes with an increase in capital cost. And this can range from, say, $5,000 for thermoplastic all the way up to $50,000 crossing as you get further and further into the active transportation infrastructure. So I already discussed these, but yeah, these essentially that first level, which is the twin parallel lines, zebra crosswalks, and then advanced yield to pedestrians. And that's of course accompanied by yield to pedestrians. This is a real life picture of what you can see for these types of crossings. So as you can see, there's the actual bike lane, which runs through the crossing, tactile warning strips for people with sight loss and to provide that sort of intersections here when you're getting there. Side street ramps up to the crossing and sidewalk. So this one in particular is a raised crossing. And yield control. And the different colors of green kind of just show the difference in costs as you get further into the improvements. So this is another types of treatments from our active transportation network plan. As you can see, it's the focusing on active transportation at intersections. So this is where you can see in areas of high pedestrian usage, high vehicle, high speeds, arterial roads. This is definitely a lot of treatments that you can incorporate into active transportation design. So you have things like the number one, which is the stopping standing zone. So that's to allow for visibility of pedestrians and cyclists. Motor vehicle parking and stopping can't happen in front of this zone. Bike yield line. So that's again that warning, and they call it dragon's teeth. That's used as sort of a buffer between the crosswalk and cyclist stopping there. Pedestrian islands. So this allows the pedestrians to get across the bike lane safely and have a place of refuge to wait, and also have a clear line of sight to the vehicles that are also waiting. Bike queue area, similar concept. Providing that visibility and a refuge area for cyclists trying to take that movement. Number 5 is the bike setback, and that's just from the roadway. Number 6 is the corner island. 7 is the motorist waiting zone. So that's someone that's trying to make that right-hand turn. They're allowed to get over and have an area in case there's a pedestrian crossing or cyclist. And the cross bike markings. So that's often delineated by different colors, such as the green thermoplastic paint, apparently hard to say. And that's often as well as solid line, not just a zebra. Okay, so second part, first part was talking about the types of treatments and sort of infrastructure, active transportation infrastructure at intersections and the different levels. Now we're here to talk about the sidewalk and bike lane projects. I mentioned those are starting hopefully next month, pending no speed bumps. But we're going to go into the specific intersections and how and each crossing as part of these sidewalk improvements, what the upgrade has been at the crossings, and just that general design philosophy of balancing the active transportation upgrade at the crossing with costs. So first, we'll start with the Hagel and Marlene intersection. So the Hagel project itself is our continuation of our bikeway to get to the Galloping Goose Trail. You can see that in the center here is the Galloping Goose Trail. We have a right of way through the cemetery on the left-hand side. Yeah, still left-hand view. Left-hand side where we're actually going to be implementing a pedestrian counter at 80 Road. And then the right-hand side, you can see the Marlene Drive intersection. So you are seeing active transportation improvements here. It's not an unmarked crossing anymore. You do have the zebra paint implemented, a narrower crossing to allow for movement of pedestrians. And if I can go into the next picture, yes. So that's what we have here today. Moving on to Alicia Place, similar treatment. As you can see on the right-hand side, we have this. We do have a stop sign there, but we do not have a crossing. And this is a school zone. So this is where in TAC design standards that we do require a zebra crossing. But again, you're seeing a narrowing of the throat of the intersection and improvement. This is Hagel Road at David Cameron, similar treatment with the zebra crossing. And feel free to stop me at any point in time if you'd have any things that you'd like to see or suggestions perhaps, but I'll keep going. So one more.
Thanks, Tyler. Sorry, so you're happy for us just to discuss as you go through each one? Okay. I've got some comments for you. So just while we're on the goose crossing, sorry to back up a couple of slides, but I understand that there's a CRD working group that are looking at the regional trail intersection design. I just wanted the staff know what status that group's at. I wondered they might have a input about that particular goose crossing, just because the CRD does have a working group specifically looking at
Perhaps Ian is online to speak to that.
Hi, Tyler, can you hear me?
Yep.
I do not have information regarding that working group, but happy to return to committee with that information once we get it.
What's the name of it there, David, just so we can get it?
Yeah, so it's a CRD working group and they're specifically looking at the regional trail intersection design. Yeah.
Did you get that, Mr. Borhill?
Yes, got it, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Go ahead, keep going, David.
Yeah, so just with regards to the one you've got up, Tyler. Yeah, so I understand that the Galloping Goose right away, that's why that's still gravel and not sealed. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Love to see that the path through the green space is getting sealed. That's excellent. I just wondered, why is there two almost 90-degree bends in the sidewalk there? Could that be smoothed out to be a nice even curve, or just on the, what's that, the west, where it comes off Hagel on the right-hand side towards the goose?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, it's finding that transition between the sidewalk and the trail, but definitely something we will be looking at. Yeah.
Is it overemphasized in the diagram perhaps, or?
Yeah, sometimes it is just given that you're so far away. Like if you're on site, it might be less of a aggressive 90-degree transition, but
Okay.
we do absolutely like to have easiest transition possible.
Oh, that'd be
That's
great.
the little zigzag we're talking about right there, the S curve there, right
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Goose Trail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's that was in the next slide. There's the big boulders there. Will they be removed, or will there be like bollards put in with wider spacing? Like I go through there twice a day with my son, and we've come off there once before. You know, there's
Yeah.
the big boulders.
You had a
over there.
picture of it. Why don't you use?
It's on the next slide, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you asking for those to be removed or not?
Oh, I wondered if they were if there's any plan for that to be. I know that the pathway would
Yeah.
be to the right of that photo, peeling back to the opening in the fence.
Yeah. It's tough because this is CRD property. So
Gotcha.
we're trying to be as least invasive as we can be on here.
Okay.
But happy to hear this feedback because that gives us the sort of backing to initiate this type of.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. And then the four-way stop at Marlene and Hagel. I wondered why there's not painted zebra crossing on all four corners. And there's no like elephant's feet or bike symbol for the continuation of the bike lane running parallel with the zebra crossing on the west side of the intersection.
Yeah, good point. We're definitely trying to encourage that crossing where the sidewalks are. But as for the elephant feet, I guess it's not a shared crossing because the bike lane's not behind the curb. But definitely something we can look at. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
I was just thinking because kids will be coming out of the neighborhood from all streets heading down to David Cameron, so or maybe to the Goose. So anyway, that's all. And one more question. So this may be, it's where Colwood's right of way and the CRD right of way, it's that chain link fence. Wonder if that could be widened. That's on the other side of the Goose I guess that's on the west side or the south side.
It might be in that photo you had, the next slide,
Oh yeah.
or backup one. What was it there?
Yeah. So on the far side of that left photo, you can see there's two posts and that's a chain link fence. I wondered if that could be extended at all. That's going to be where the asphalt. It's going to be a 2 meter wide path from the drawing. I wondered that's
Okay. So the concern is about the gap
Consideration at
with
all.
the fence, or how close it is to the fence?
just the gap between the two fence posts.
Okay.
That's all. More room's always better.
I've got lots of room to make notes, so thank you. Yeah.
So that's me for that.
Is that it for that
intersection.
stretch?
Yeah.
Anybody else for the Hagel stretch? Colin, Stefan, good. And I'm good, thanks. Can't read my writing.
Okay. I think that's the first slide. Yep. Okay, so Kelly Road, this is the second of our active transportation projects identified as the last 10 of our first phase here of our active transportation sidewalk and bike lane projects. So as you can see, there's actually it's not on here, but the playground zone is just in the top left corner there. So this is a area contemplated with the high pedestrian usage with the playground zone. And we do have the Colwood Bikeway on 80 Road, which is top part coming down to Machosen. And that's what connects up to Machosen at Souk. So at this intersection, we have the zebra crossing and of course the narrowed concrete let downs there. The parallel lines, or I guess perpendicular to the zebras, but there is the lines there delineating the direction of travel. And I should have mentioned this before as well, but that's intended for peoples that have visual impairments when they're going down the ramp, that they can feel the tick of the lines, to put it technically, and allowing that line to direct them in the direction of travel. We are going to adjust the ramp in the final design because it does look a little wonky. You can see compared to the ramp let down, but that is the design philosophy there. And this is the other end of Kelly, where you have the let down going into the commercial plaza there. Yeah, I don't have any further comments. Okay, moving on to Lagoon.
Let's
Sorry.
just exhaust any questions for, sorry, I saw, do you have something with the last slide there?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair.
There you go.
Thanks, Tyler. Sorry, do you mind if we bring it back to the David Cameron entrance? Thank you. So I just noticed, I just wondered if a consideration for a continual treatment would be considered there, just because it's a high vehicle and pedestrian volume coming in and out of the school. It might encourage drivers to slow down when entering and exiting David Cameron. And I know it's a very short section of bike lane, but it looks to be a really wide boulevard and then just unprotected bike lane for the school kids coming out of the school heading up Hagel. I just wondered if consideration was going to be made to have a grade separated on the boulevard rather than having the kids come around with just a line of paint on the road there.
So are we talking on the road to the school or out on Hagel Drive when you come around the corner?
Well, sorry, on number 7, let's look at that crossing. So in the drawing, it's going to have a curb cut with pedestrians coming down to street level. I wondered if it had been considered to have that as a continuous treatment going across there.
Raised concrete.
Yeah,
sidewalk.
raised, yeah, so that the sidewalk is continual treatment. So it would be raised, it would stay at sidewalk height, and then the vehicles would have to proceed up to that level
Gotcha.
with Dragon's Teeth up onto that table and back down again. So it'll slow all turning movements as well as encourage the drivers to stop before the crossing, especially at a school entrance. And then commenting on the unprotected bike lane on Hagel that heads to the left of the left drawing. It's a wide boulevard between the road curb and the sidewalk. I know it's probably only going to be maybe 40 meters long before you get to that corner where Hagel turns. But again, there's another entrance, pedestrian entrance that runs along the creek up into David Cameron as well. So I just wondered if that was a consideration as well.
So this, what you're showing us, this has already gone to tender and has been awarded, is that right?
Right.
And so at this point, I guess the feedback that we're looking for is stuff like this that we maybe need to add to the next sidewalk contract, or if we feel it's that imperative, if it's something that we're willing to finance or to pay for. But help me out, Tyler, this stretch here, Hagel, where does it fit in on our road spectrum as far as volumes? And like, I get it's intense for two half-hour blocks during the day, but as far as the general,
Yeah,
I know you don't have it at hand, but
No,
where
I
does it
do
fit?
actually.
It's obviously not a collector road. It's
it is a local road.
local.
But like you said, you're gonna see peak volumes at pick up and drop off.
Right.
I did actually ask for a traffic count before attending this meeting, and you're looking at the 500 range for vehicle volume throughout the day
Okay.
on an average weekday.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where it fits in with the local
Right.
road. But as you mentioned, if that's a recommendation for future projects, given it's a school crossing, and maybe at the end deliberation on.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing here as far as all of these treatments, help me out again. This is absolutely consistent with our guidelines and what the expectation is currently today within our master transportation plan and the other guiding documents
Yes.
for design.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we speak to raised or elevated, because elevated sidewalks has come up a number of times now. Do we speak to the circumstances where an elevated sidewalk is imperative or should be considered off the top of your head, sorry. I don't know,
Yeah.
put you on the spot, but
Thank you.
it does fit in there somewhere, right? But this isn't, contextually speaking, this isn't one of those circumstances where we would look to the, that first.
It's one of those items that's identified at discretion. We don't have a hard implication on at exactly this number of vehicle volumes and this traffic count and speeds that we would require
gotcha.
race crossing. I guess it could be tied in with our traffic calming initiative that we have, and that's kind of where maybe traffic calming might be identified on a road like this, and we have a policy for that, which I fortunately can't speak to off the top of my head. But it's where implementing that type of under that policy, it's that if we have traffic calming, okay, instead of doing cushions, we could do a raised crossing.
Right.
And there's other spots like on Lagoon where we have the cushions.
So the kind of feedback you need from us, and I'll throw this out there, if this is something that we're absolutely married to along the way there, we'll put it to a motion to give specific feedback to Tyler to take away, because what would have to happen is that item, as far as a change, would have to be costed. And then it would come to council with a price tag attached to it. Here's a recommendation from committee. Here's the price. And then ultimately council would decide, do they want to change the approach for that particular. So it gets to be a cost, dollars and cents, things that as sort of data driven as that might sound, it's important. It's an important consideration, but shall we keep moving? If you have more, David, or?
I just would like to comment on the Addie Kelly on the corner of Herm Williams Park. That's a really dark, so the existing pedestrian crossing is very dark. There's no lighting above it. It's actually quite far away from the crossing. It's really dark at night. I wondered if any lighting improvements were a part of the plan there above the crossing.
Or flashing amber lights or what have you, or?
Well, does have flashing amber lights right now, but as far as street light goes, there's one that's actually facing into the park quite a ways down, and the other one
in the
is
middle of the park, isn't it?
yeah, it's leaning right over into the park, and then on the other end, it's quite a way up Kelly Road.
So is any lighting part of this? This is a sidewalk contract, is it?
Yes, but lighting was, I'm remembering back to before I started, but I believe they're in council meetings, lighting was something that was discussed and reviewed. It was not decided to implement lighting on these projects, given the costs. However, as part of these projects, we are installing conduit for electrical.
Oh, okay.
So if in the future council decides to provide lighting, the infrastructure would be there, minor infrastructure.
And just one other comment regarding markings is no thermoplastic paint happening for that bikeway where it crosses perpendicular, Kelly, like, or those crow beacons, flashing beacons or anything, no induction loops to sense the bikes waiting to cross, or?
No,
No.
not as part of.
So you're right, as I recall, that is a bikeway across down parallel to the park, feeding into the Hagel Drive area there. And I did notice it doesn't seem to carry through across to the other side. What is that, a die? It doesn't, there's nothing that continuous as far as cycling goes from one side to the other.
It would just be the oh my gosh, the Sharrows bikeway. So as it's a separate, this actually was part of originally these projects, but we've separated it to have cost efficiencies. But our public works team is actually painting the Sharrows paint.
Okay.
But everything that you identified for the loops and that are not part of that.
Yeah. We would reserve those for probably more like controlled intersections and stuff like that. Am I thinking, but so, and there's no crosswalk on the because that cycling pathway is on the opposite side from the crosswalk.
Well,
Sorry,
I've cycled down that way, and I mean, I'm not as sophisticated as as Mr. Lacy is, but as I recall, when you shoot across, if you want to take the crosswalk, you have to cross and then get back on the bike lane, as opposed to I guess what I'm getting at, a painted crosswalk line across the bike pathway.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Thank you, Bryce. I guess if you were, so I actually do bike this to and from work too, so I have good knowledge of this, but if you wanted to do, like you said, the first option, which would be dismantling your bike and using the controlled crossing, or waiting at the intersection and crossing when safe.
I mean, what does our ATMP specify? I mean, I get if we have multiple crossings and there's multiple opportunities for something to go sideways. So do we try, I mean, is the intent that we divert people to the existing crosswalk and use that? Is that the idea?
You know, at controlled crossing, we have things like the green paint, but in terms of ATMP, Ian,
Yeah.
perhaps, you know, offhand, ATMP treatments.
Yeah, I think one thing to note in the draft active transportation network plan is it's called for the elephant's feet markings to denote the intention for the crossing to provide crossing for cyclists as well as pedestrians.
So I think what I'm talking about is painted lines, so we can certainly circle back, I think, on something like that.
Yeah. One example is, I think the city of Victoria, it's on Finlayson and Jackson. It's an uncontrolled intersection with those crow flashing lights for pedestrians, has refuge islands in the center, and it has the elephant's feet and the bike symbol going across, which is a similar intersection. There's a bikeway crossing a main street like the Chosen crosses Kelly here.
Okay.
So anyway, it could be a
So
consideration
that's
for the
Jackson
future.
and Finlayson, if you want to have a look, and maybe you can bring it up on GIS or something from the city of Victoria.
Yeah.
Should we move along?
Thanks,
Anything-
Carly. Yeah.
I guess I can say
Thank you.
one thing part of that. So the previous recommendation for staff to review intersections for prioritization. I'm way too early to speak to this, but this is definitely great feedback for something like that. Like if this is our bike corridor, our bike highway per se to get to the Galloping Goose Trail, this certainly could be something identified where you need, like you said, at Jackson and Vinceland. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess it's still my turn. Okay. Okay, so Lagoon Road. So this project's from Millburn Drive to Aloha. Starting at Millburn Road, there's definitely a pretty tight corridor here to fit active transportation infrastructure. So you do see the dotted line, and it's pretty much right where that picture ends as it turns into a solid line with bollards getting around the corner. We'd love to have the buffer there, but we couldn't fit it in with room that we have. And again, that's balancing the costs of, you can see there's a retaining wall along Lagoon Road there. And that's implemented just to realize the infrastructure that we can. And yeah, this has the zebra crossing as well. Heather Bell. So this is another spot where you have the zebra crossing getting across the road to the existing sidewalks going up Lagoon. This road was identified for traffic calming, which we know has the speed cushions. So this is one area you guess you could see a raised crossing. But I guess there's one, you have to think about the proximity, I guess, to the existing crossing or to the existing speed cushions. But as you can see in the picture, you have the bollards there, and that's the continuation on from the previous section. And that's just to help get around the corner for the cyclists, delineating between the bike lane and the driving lane. And those do end shortly after that picture. This is the Crowhurst Place, the first cul-de-sac crossing. We are seeing an improved crossing. This one likely would just be a twin parallel, but keeping it consistent and as well with trying to encourage active transportation. We've had the improved zebra crossing and the bump outs as well. We'll go on to Joanne, similar treatment.
What do the green crosshatch markings represent? Is that just the width of the treatment or is?
Oh, that's the landscaping restoration.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, I meant the crossed green lines in the middle there, middle of the road.
Oh, I think they're blue on this screen. Sorry. That's the asphalt restoration.
Okay, so that's the actual area of work. Is
Yeah,
that the idea? Okay.
that's where we'll be tearing out asphalt and installing new asphalt.
And you mentioned bollards. Actual bollards or pickets?
Pickets. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah,
I was gonna say a bollard in that corner, a bus is gonna take that out in a
yeah.
heartbeat, because that's already tight on that corner for the 52 there. Yeah.
So moving on to Joanne, this is another narrowing of the throat there of the crossing roadway and zebras. And finally, Aloha, where we'll be tying into the existing sidewalk. If you're looking at the real-time picture, it's on the left-hand side. And that's just realizing the lagoon sidewalks from Aloha.
All those works are on the one side of the road, right? There's no sidewalk going on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. As part of this program, yeah.
I think we considered that, but it's problematic because there's a ravine there and stuff.
Thanks, Tyler. My only thought was just because the lagoon's such a slope was what the angle of the gradient of the sidewalk, say for people that are traveling down on a wheelchair or the walker or whatever. Is that in consideration? Do you know what the maximum slope is on the sideways on the sidewalk at all, or?
The gradient of the sidewalk will follow the road going up and down. And there's unfortunately not much you can do with that. And then going sideways, it's 2%.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Righto. 2%. Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. Thank you.
Cool.
Just a quick question. The Lagoon Road project, just for my knowledge, how is it going to proceed? Are these one after the other, each intersection? You're starting at one end to the other, you're tackling them all at once? I'm just curious for when I can expect to see this effect on the traffic and when it'll be started and finished.
Are
Thank
you
you.
talking about the current projects?
Yeah, basically the last 3 or 4 ones on Lagoon that we just saw, these things here, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, hoping to start next month for the program. We'll see Hagel happening first in an attempt. We actually made it mandatory for the contractor to be done before school starts up in September. So hoping to realize that one first, and then Kelly, and then Lagoon. So you can see it towards the end of this year. All the projects are meant to be complete by the end of the year. It's in the tender.
And then I think further, he further inquired about whether it happens all at once. So all 4 of those intersections, and my recollection is when we did them before, like they're doing concurrent works in all those locations. So like they'll move through and rip them all up on one day, start work the next day. So
That's correct. Yeah, you'll see the entire road ripped up, and
I'm no engineer, so. Just- Do you have anything else or?
oh,
Lagoon?
thank you. Apologies. Thank you. That's it for my presentation. Yeah.
Why don't we start with Paul and there, David?
Oh, hello. I am pleased to see the zebra crosswalk. So I know sometimes in COED, they put a zebra crosswalk in, but later rip it up to just put 2 parallel lines in areas, especially in areas like high concentration of pedestrians, like near the Rollway High School. That was unfortunate because some students expressed to me that now that there's less visibility for them and cars aren't paying as much attention because, well, it looks more like a road than a place where people actually cross. So I am happy to see that many of the intersections are including that. I noticed, I think like the one by one of the intersections along Kelly, I think like near the parking lot was that one, it had no crosswalk, zebra crosswalk there. So it's a bit curious to know why, with so much vehicles coming in and out of the parking lot, why that was considered not, I guess, needed enough to have a zebra crosswalk there. And I was wondering why because like I know there's quite a bit of cost to why you can't have continuous crosswalks in many areas. So just wondering why maybe not like green paint or things to also show the bike lane, just like try to put most amount of stuff there to show people that this is a place for people rather than cars, when you can't put in the continuous crosswalk to give that safety, but to give the safety rather instead of paint, which is not ideal, but when cost is a huge consideration, to try to not skip out on that last step to try to make it a bit better in some of those areas. So if there is funds available, doing the continuous crosswalks in areas of the high concentration of pedestrian use, cyclist use, like maybe areas that are having mass development or closer to schools, that would be areas to prioritize for continuous crosswalks, and in areas that can't have them, continue with zebra crosswalks, or and also having continuous bike lanes with the green paint there to give even more color contrast from the road to show this is a place where people are. And thank you.
That's very forward looking, and I think that is the kind of framework you're looking for as far as guidance. And he's absolutely right. I don't see any hash marks or zebras or what have you, or elephant feet at the Hatley Plaza exit onto Kelly Road at all. And there must be something going in there as far as a crosswalk or something. Maybe it's just not included in the diagram. I'll leave that thought with you. There's certainly nothing in the diagram here other than it shows a bike lane, but Mr. Lacey.
Thanks. Just one last question on the Galloping Goose crossing. Will that still be accessible for people walking through there once construction's underway? Will that be like closed at all for people walking?
Great question. Certainly, we make sure that this type of infrastructure is accessible, and just off the top of my head, I don't see detour route being feasible. So yeah, we will ensure that that crossing is accessible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My son's paper route depends on it.
So the revenue for the Lacey household depends on you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Write that down.
That's awesome. Is there anything else? Is there any decision points that are needed there? You heard what committee had to say on a few points there. I guess we'd love to see what kind of treatment can be considered just for that exit, the commercial exit onto Kelly Road. I think that's a great point. And I think the good discussion about the bikeway through at Herm William Park there, what that might look like, we can probably circle back and do that after the fact. But I think you heard from committee that something there might be nice. Other than that, I think it's exciting. And we've long heard from the community that they want sidewalk projects, and this council is, and the previous council are working hard to deliver. And and I think it's a big step up from where we're starting from to where we end up. And if the previous projects that we've done nearby here is any metric, I think it'll be deluxe. So, and then we can work to refine this each time these come forward. I see Mr. Rosenberg. Yes. What have we forgotten?
You haven't forgotten anything, Chair. I just wanted to thank the committee for their suggestions, and I think it's like a lot of things we do. We could do everything perfectly, but then the costs start skyrocketing on us. And I think a great example is the conduits we're putting in for the lights. So in some cases, we're trying to future-proof some of this stuff so that, you know, as funds become available or as standards change, we can actually have the infrastructure in place to adapt to those things. Or much like the bike lanes many years ago, 1.2 meter painted bike lane was like, wow, we're really moving ahead. Now it's an embarrassment to suggest that situation, but there's some places where that's the only treatment that can happen. So sometimes we're just trying to set up for the future, because as you said, Councillor Jansen, ouch, that we're trying to get as much done as we can well, as opposed to very little done perfectly. And the raised crosswalks are a great example. I think there probably are some areas where we didn't put them in the ATMP because the cost is significant. But moving forward, I think there's probably room to say, okay, there's some special circumstances where volumes and conflict attempts are there. So we are looking at some programs that called Sandwich is doing a program now, and I think they're calling it Zero Roads or something like that, where they're looking at pedestrian and cycling volumes compared to vehicle volumes and the conflicts that occur, and using that conflict potential as one of the design elements on what the treatments look like. So we're going to look at that in the future and come back to the committee and get some input on that and see how that flavors some of these future decisions we're going to make. Your example about the commercial at Hatley, I'm sure what happened was you get so far and you go, okay, should we stop here? Then you get a little farther, okay, do we stop here? And I'm sure it was like, well, if we go through that intersection, then we got to narrow the throat. We got to put the curb radiuses in. We got to put all this extra concrete in, and we're already going for debt financing to do these projects. So I'm sure it was like, okay, let's stop before the intersection. But in hearing this conversation, I'm sure there's something we can do through the public works aspect, and at least get that zebra crossing across that throat to at least make that treatment occur, or else just add it to the contract. But when it comes to an extra on these contracts, you kind of want to stay from those because you're paying a premium. So that might be something we can do with regards to the public works side of things. So appreciate the comments, and rest assured that we're aware of some of these more improved facilities that we could be putting in, but it is kind of, trying to get some length out of some of these projects as well, as opposed to the premium effects. But we will be coming back to the committee with some other suggestions. And at some point we will be talking about these intersections. So that the very complicated intersection with the bike boxes and all of that, those will be treatments that we'll have to consider when we get into Souk and Aldine and those kinds of VMP and Souk, if working with the ministry there. There'll be some significant upgrades there, and there'll be a lot of work there. So we'll come back to the committee.
Made
with
a
some
note
ideas.
here, and looking at some of the diagrams, a note to myself largely, but how much is too much? Because I can tell you that some of these intersections visually distracting with the various bits and bobs, and to the point where I'll give you a great example. Coming down the hill, going towards Latoya Road at Roe Bay there, and you have a beautiful sidewalk and a bike way, but the bikeway was wide enough it could be misinterpreted for an actual roadway. And there's
For a
bollards
lane.
there now because I
Yeah.
brought it up, but the point is, I hate to ask, but where does it end? And because some of this ends up being a bit of an amalgamation of different things, and it gets over the top as far as confusion goes. And a good example off the top of my head, Tyler, for you to look at on Google Earth is the new intersection at Tillicum and Burnside. It is an abomination of lines. It really is. It looks like someone spilled paint all over the intersection, and it's confusing as a driver. And there's hash marks and lines going in all sorts of different directions. I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit, or
Well, I can't
put on your engineer hat and
I can kind of. I mean, there are some treatments out there where, it's okay to confuse people, because when people are confused, they stop and think. And sometimes I think some of these areas are like, okay, let's make it, where people are going, okay, what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to stop? In lieu of information or that kind of conversation amongst yourselves, you usually, think about trying to find an address when you're driving down the road. You're not quite sure where you are. What do? You slow down, you think about it, you look. I mean, that confusion can cause other issues when it's not, planned. But there are areas where, we want people to feel uncomfortable in the decisions they're making, so that they do slow down and not make that. Now, whether that was the treatment objective for the intersection you're mentioning, I'm not sure, because the other side of that is why they're trying to figure it all out. They forget about the pedestrian on the right and then put forward, and there's an accident. Now, the consequence is small because they're stopped, but it still occurs. So there is a fine balance here.
I opened up a can of worms, David. Here, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Rosenberg. Yeah, it also works inversely. Like when you have a straight piece of road and a clear way, all the bush and brush pull to the side, it gives you a greater sense of, naturally you'd want to go faster, even if they just paint the lanes narrower, it naturally makes people slow down. It's like, Suka Road in front of Royal Roads, that's a pretty fast stretch of road because it's super boring. The brick wall, the cemetery, it's all wide, and it's, there's no obstructions. But as Mr. Rosenberg said, if you start to, compress things down and make people start to have to concentrate and pay attention, then they naturally want to slow down. So
Maybe there is science behind it.
There is a little bit psychologically for sure with your arts degree. That's probably where you pick up on some of these things.
So thank you, Mr. Rosenberg. Any final thoughts from committee? Go ahead.
Thank you. I do have a question that, yes, there's a huge funding constraint that causes us to not be able to put in the most ideal kind of infrastructure in. But say when a developer comes along with a huge project or something, will they be required to put in the highest standard safety stuff? Or would their designs be very similar to what we're already seeing of more the improper kind of cost cutting kind of designs?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word cost cutting, that's for sure. We usually make them deal with the same standard that we deal with ourselves. Now, that being said, again, moving forward, some of those treatments, because part of it is for our sustainability, everything we put in, we have to plan also to finance and replace. So it's really a tough balance when we're starting to look at a tax increase every year. Like when the developer gives us all this free stuff, we then have to go to our finance department and say, hey, we just got $4 million worth of stuff. And they said, well, how long is it going to last? Okay, now we got to start saving every year. The way we save is by increasing taxes to set aside some money to replace all that stuff in the future. So typically we would not ask them to put in the premium just because they can, because then on the other side of that, okay, that's just going right back to the cost of the housing. So again, somebody that's trying to get into the market, whatever it is, the developer's just going to put that cost back in the housing piece of it. And then again, housing at some point gets too high. So they generally follow the same standards, and we've got bylaws that basically direct them on how they build things and what we like to see. And then sometimes when it's extenuating, we will ask for an upgrade on something because something maybe has changed or something of circumstance that's different than the norm requires it. So that would be the case. And to your point about Royal Bay and the high school, in my mind with the volume at Latoria, that might be a good place to start something like that and try it as a trial. So that might make sense in that area.
So what I'm hearing is this is really centered on identified concerns for a specific area. You would consider going above and beyond sort of the current guidelines or standards.
Yeah, I mean, it's cost for value. What are you getting out of it? And back to that new program that we're going to look at, it might identify some premium situations where you're going to want to have a premium because of conflicts, both with vehicle, pedestrian, and cyclists in that area, or lighting might make a difference, right? You might say, okay, don't do a extra treatment here, but increase the lighting, and that might offset that treatment on the ground. So there's different aspects to take a look at that, but that's something we're looking at moving forward.
And your point about the cost for replacement, and currently we have a tax on the rolls, which is a 1% increase for like a dozen years to help us finance replacement of some of our roadways and what have you in the future. So it is a thing.
Yeah, and this is just one small part of our business. We've got sewers and water. Thank you.
Perfect. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg, as always. And seeing nothing else, if someone would like to move adjournment, I wouldn't be opposed. Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. And thank you, Amanda and Tiffany. And we're adjourned.